What is up, everybody? We are on day 91 of our Bible in a Year series, continuing in 2 Samuel chapter 4 today. This is going to be shorter. We don't have, uh, we still have 3 chapters, but they're just shorter chapters. So this is going to happen. There's going to be some ebb and flow. But we are on 2 Samuel chapter 4. When Saul's son, Ish-bosheth, heard that Abner had died in Hebron, he gave up, and all Israel was dismayed. Saul's son had 2 men who were leaders of raiding parties, one named Bana, the other Rechab, sons of Ramon, the Beerothite of the Benjamites. Beeroth is also considered part of Benjamin. The Beerothites fled to Gittaim and still reside there as aliens today. Saul's son Jonathan had a son whose feet were crippled. He was 5 years old when the report about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel. His nanny picked him up and fled, but as she was hurrying to flee, he fell and became lame. His name was Mephibosheth. Rechab and Bana, the sons of Ramon, the Beerothite, set out and arrived at Ish-bosheth's house during the heat of the day while the king was taking his midday nap. They entered the interior of the house as if to get wheat and stabbed him in the stomach. Then Rechab and his brother Bana escaped. They had entered the house while Ish-bosheth was lying on his bed in his bedroom and stabbed and killed him. They removed his head, took it, and traveled by way of the Arabah all night. They brought Ish-bosheth's head to David at Hebron and said to the king, "Here's the head of Ish-bosheth, son of Saul, your enemy, who intended to take your life. Today the Lord has granted vengeance to my lord, the king, against Saul and his offspring." So they think that they are doing good. But how did David take the news of Saul's death from the dude previously? Not very well. Let's see if this is any different. Verse 9. But David answered Rechab and his brother Bana, sons of Ramon of Beerothite, "As the Lord lives, the one who has redeemed my life from every distress, when the person told me, 'Look, Saul is dead,' he thought he was a bearer of good news. But I seized him and put him to death at Ziklag. That was my reward to him for his news. How much more when wicked men kill a righteous man in his own house, on his own bed? So now should I not require his blood from you and purge you from the earth?" So David gave orders to the young men, and they killed Rechab and Bana. They cut off their hands and feet and hung their bodies by the pool in Hebron. But they took Ish-bosheth's head and buried it in Abner's tomb in Hebron. So, even in death, David is still trying to uphold the legacy, I guess you could say, bloodline of Saul and Jonathan, right? So, chapter 5. All the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, "Here we are, your own flesh and blood. Even while Saul was king over us, you were the one who led us to battle and brought us back. The Lord also said to you, 'You will shepherd my people, Israel, and you will be ruler over Israel.'" So the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron. King David made a covenant with them at Hebron in the Lord's presence, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began his reign. He reigned 40 years In Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 more years and 6 months. And in Jerusalem, he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah. The king and his men marched to Jerusalem against the Jebusites who inhabited the land. The Jebusites had said to David, "You will never get in here. Even the blind and lame can repel you," thinking David can't get in here. Yet David did capture the stronghold of Zion, that is, the city of David. He said that day, "Whoever attacks the Jebusites must go through the water shaft to reach the lame and blind who are despised by David. For this reason it is said, the blind and the lame will never enter the house." David took up residence in the stronghold, which he named the city of David. He built it up all the way around the supporting terraces inward. David became more and more powerful, and the Lord God of armies was with him. King Hiram of Tyre sent envoys to David. He also sent cedar logs, carpenters, and stonemasons, and they built a palace for David. Then David knew that the Lord had established him as king over Israel and had exalted his kingdom for the sake of the people of Israel. After he arrived from Hebron, David took more concubines and wives from Jerusalem, and more sons and daughters were born to him. These are the names of those born to him in Jerusalem: Shammua, like the whale, Shobab, Nathan, Solomon, Ibhar, Elishua, Nepheg, Japhia, Elishama, Eliada, and Eliphelet. When the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, they went in search of David. But he heard about it and went down to the stronghold. So the Philistines came and spread out in Rephaim Valley. Then David inquired of the Lord, "Should I attack the Philistines? Will you hand them over to me?" The Lord replied to David, "Attack, for I will certainly hand the Philistines over to you." So David went to Baal Perazim and defeated them there, and said, "Like a bursting flood, the Lord has burst out against my enemies before me." Therefore, he named that place, "The Lord burst out." The Philistines abandoned their idols there, and David and his men carried them off. The Philistines came up again and spread out in Rephaim Valley. So David inquired of the Lord, and he answered, "Do not attack directly, but circle around behind them and come at them opposite the balsam trees. When you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the balsam trees, act decisively, for then the Lord will have gone out ahead of you to strike down the army of the Philistines." So David did exactly as the Lord commanded him, and he struck down the Philistines all the way from Geba to Gezer. Okay, chapter 6. David again assembled all the fit young men in Israel, 30,000. He and all his troops set out to bring the ark of God from Baal, Judah. The ark bears the name of the Lord of armies, who is enthroned between the cherubim. They set the ark on a new cart and transported it from Abinadab's house, which was on the hill. So, notice something about this. How are they moving the ark? On a cart. How are they supposed to move the ark? Not on a cart. Right? If you remember back to when the ark was constructed, what we saw was the post going through the rings on it to carry it. The priest was supposed to carry it. Verse 4. And brought it with the ark of God from Abinadab's house on the hill. Ahio walked in front of the ark. David and the whole house of Israel were dancing before the Lord with all kinds of fir wood instruments, lyres, harps, tambourines, cisterns, and cymbals. When they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah reached out to the ark of God and took hold of it. because the oxen had stumbled. Then the Lord's anger burned against Uzzah, and God struck him dead on the spot for his irreverence, and he died there next to the ark of God. So, it sounds kind of crazy. The idea that Uzzah was actually trying to stop the ark from falling, and he was struck dead. But the thing is, yes, he may have been trying to stop the ark from falling, but they were already transporting it in the way that they were not supposed to be transporting it, and they were in the wrong. God doesn't play around. Verse 8. David was angry because the Lord's outburst against Uzzah, so he named that place Outburst against Uzzah, as it is today. David feared the Lord that day and said, "How can the ark of the Lord ever come to me?" So he was not willing to bring the ark of the Lord to the city of David. Instead, he diverted it to the house of Obed-Edom of Gath. The ark of the Lord remained in his house 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and his whole family. It was reported to King David, "The Lord has blessed Obed-Edom's family and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God." So David went and had the ark of God brought up from Obed-Edom's house to the city of David with rejoicing. When those carrying the ark of the Lord advanced 6 steps, he sacrificed an ox and a fattened calf. David was dancing with all his might before the Lord, wearing a linen ephod. So now they're moving it the right way. He and the whole house of Israel were bringing up the ark of the Lord with shouts and the sounds of a ram's horn. As the ark of the Lord was entering the city of David, Saul's daughter Michal looked down from the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. They brought the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent of David. Inside the tent David had pitched for it. Then David offered burnt offerings and fellowship offerings in the Lord's presence. When David had finished offering the burnt offering and the fellowship offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of armies. Then he distributed a loaf of bread, a date cake, and a raisin cake to each one in the entire Israelite community, both men and women. Then all the people went home. When David returned home to bless his household, Saul's daughter Michal came out to meet him. "How the king of Israel honored himself today," she said. "He exposed himself today in the sight of the slave girls and his subjects like a vulgar person would expose himself." David replied to Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me over your father and his whole community, his whole family, to appoint me a ruler over the Lord's people. I will dance before the Lord, and I will dishonor myself and humble myself even more. However, by the slave girl you spoke about, I will be honored." And Saul's daughter Michal had no child to the day of her death. Okay. See? Quick, painless, simple, fast today. This is an interesting one, especially with when it comes to Uzzah and how he met his demise. I think it's an interesting idea and shows the importance of not necessarily our intentions, but doing what God wants us to do. Obedience is more important than our intention. So, question 1. David's execution of Ish-bosheth's killers in chapter 4 reflects a commitment to righteousness. How does this act challenge us to consider the theological interplay between justice and mercy in God's economy? So we've talked about this a little bit. This has been a topic that comes up somewhat frequently, but there is a balance between mercy and justice. If God is merciful in that He is took the punishment that we deserved. I do think that there is still some necessary punishments here on this earth. I talked before about Jeffrey Dahmer. If, let's say, he had a genuine conversion, I still think that he should have gone through with the death penalty. It's justice. I still think that there's justice that needs to be served on this side of eternity. Question 2. Uzzah's death in chapter 6 for touching the ark reveals God's unapproachable holiness. How does this event deepen our understanding and the tension between the divine presence and the human? Presumption, pointing to Christ as our mediator. So this is another good point with this. I did forget to mention. So if you think back, the ark is supposed to be carrying the presence of God, right? And the reason that you have to go through all these steps and do these sacrifices and things like that before one of the priests can go into the Holy of Holies is because of sin, because of how holy God is. So if this is carrying the presence of God, him reaching out and touching it, he's not going to be able to live. But that still would not have even been the case had they been carrying it the correct way. Question 3. David's exuberant worship in chapter 6 contrasts with Michal's disdain. How might the scene provoke us to reflect on the nature of true worship as a response to God's covenant faithfulness? I know me personally, I need to do better about being grateful. Being grateful and acknowledging times when God's faithful, even if it's not necessarily the way that we want it to be, the way that we think it should be. Acknowledging God's faithfulness in that, I think, is an important thing. Yeah. Okay. That is it for today. I said it was going to be a short one, so a short one. We'll be back tomorrow with more in 2 Samuel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe on this video. I enjoy hearing from people. I enjoy talking back and forth. So put a comment or something in there, and I can talk with you. Don't forget to make sure you hit the notification bell when you do subscribe. A lot of awesome stuff in the works. I was actually, before I recorded this, I was sitting down and coming up with some notes on some things we have coming up. Some guests that we're going to have on that I've not announced yet. It'll be announced once the video airs. But have some guests coming on. Have some other topics we're going to explore. Some interesting, fun topics we're going to explore. And you want to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of that. Come back tomorrow. We will be continuing in 2 Samuel. Oh, if this has been a blessing to you, share it with others. Word of mouth is still the best way podcast spread. So if you can share it with other people, then you can help the podcast spread. They can find someone that they can listen to. They can come back daily and listen to these or watch these or whatever it is, and then help them build a habit of getting into the Word every single day. So appreciate that. Appreciate everyone watching up to this point. Don't forget to come back tomorrow. It's going to be fun, exciting stuff, and I will see you then. God bless.